Now I'm going to start, I'm getting ready to start another piece here. This is in the series of little value studies, little 5x7 value studies that you can do from photographs to learn how to translate photographs into paintings. Now I have a piece here that has got some real bad compositional problems. One is my horizon line is awfully close to being in the center of the canvas. Now one of the reasons I do this thirds grid is, see, I'm going to be able, I can just automatically move that horizon line. This is where the horizontal plane meets the vertical plane. I'm going to move that down to the bottom third. So see, now I have a dominant and a subordinate shape. Just starting out from the beginning. You don't, unless you have some really overriding reason that I can't think of at the moment, you don't want things of equal size, equal shape, equal spacing. You want, if you're painting nature, you want it random. So now I want a larger space here than I have here, and so I've moved this horizon line down. Moved it down to here. Now also, this big tree right here, and this is going to happen in a lot of your photographs, this big tree right here is in the center of the canvas. So what I'm going to do with that, I think, I don't want it in the center. So I think I'm going to, for the purposes of this one, I'm going to move it over to the left-hand third. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to do a little shape here that is reminiscent of a tree. And I'm going to bring it down a little below the horizon line. If this tree were on the horizon line, it would be like 20 miles away and it would be 500 feet tall. So I have to bring it down below the horizon line. Now I've got this little section of forest that's, there's a few trees here on the side, and then it starts to go into solid forest. Now see, I know from teaching, a lot of my students will start, they'll put the trunks in, then they'll try to build the trees. No, try to look at the shape. Try to look at that as a mass, as a shape, not as trees. Okay, now there's also a row of trees that's all the way across the back. And I'm going to just kind of put that shape in, and then, then I'm going to make some little vertical marks, and that basically gets me to start thinking in terms of those distant trees. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do back here, I can see those mountains. The mountains are coming up. I'm going to probably do a high peak on that right-hand third, and then, and I always, when I'm doing these mountains, I want an uptick at the edge of the canvas. Now see, I've got this long slope going down on this side, but I've got all these stops going upright. So I want to have things that will keep the viewer from sliding off the sides of the canvas. Okay, now I've got this river here in the foreground, and that's going to come over. And again, this elbow in the river is awfully close to the center of the canvas. So I'm going to come over to the right-hand third and build it there. So there I've got, counting this water right here, I've got 1, 2, these trees are 3, this 4, 5, I've got this painting is going to be 6 basic shapes. Remember, much more than that, you're going to have it too complicated for the viewer to appreciate or to figure out. So my first step is I'm going to take my cool mud, mix a dark cool green, and I'm going to work along the bank of the river. There's all of this foliage that stands up. So I've got this dark down in here. Then the next thing I'm going to do, I'll probably do it about the same value. I'm going to, and maybe I'll take this tree. It's awfully close to the top of the canvas. So I think I might take that tree right off the top. And, I want it, see how this shape goes back and forth coming down? The pine trees, and again, I've harped on this before, they're not symmetrical. They're balanced, but they're not symmetrical. Now, technically, this next row of trees is back a little ways. So technically, that's going to be, these are going to be a little lighter. Not light enough there. These are going to be a little lighter and a little bluer. So I'm going to, and the way I'm going to figure that out, see, I'm going to touch right there, and I can see they're just barely lighter. And when I'm blocking these in, you know, I'm putting color on these, but the color, the value of this color is more important than the actual color. So anyway, so see, now I've got a wider shape here, barely a shape. I've got this shape coming down. This shape is a little more of a wedge, and this shape is really open at the top. So I've got a collection of shapes in my negative space there. Okay, now I have to go lighter and bluer again. And when I get back that far, I have found if I put a tiny bit of cool red in it, it seems to work better. So I'm going to start right there. Now it needs to be a little lighter than that. So see, it's got to be back behind these trees. So I'm just going to test the color there. That looks better. So I'm going to put those back going. And what I'm going to do here too is I'm going to make them a little, you know, I don't want it just to look like a mowed lawn all the way across there. So some of these are going to stick up, and I'm going to make this a little taller as it gets to the edge of the canvas. That again keeps the slope going back towards this main tree. Okay, so there's my foreground verticals, my midground verticals, a little further back verticals. Now I'm going to add some red, cool red and white, and a little blue. And notice in my palette how my mud is there, and I just keep working out from that. Okay, so now I've got not enough white. A lot of times it looks like there's enough white in my color, but when I get it on the canvas, there's not. Okay, that's getting a little better. I think I want it just a little lighter and a little bluer. Okay, so now, see, I hope you can see on the camera that that what I'm putting on for this mountain is lighter than the row of trees. And now, actually, you know, the top of that mountain is a little further from the viewer than the bottom of the mountain. So that mountain top is going to be just a little lighter and bluer than the bottom of the mountain. Brush check. How are you holding your brush? Now, you know, I've been telling most of my students, hold their brush like this, you know, not like a pen. If you try to use the tip of the brush, it just flattens and it's worthless. If you hold your brush like this, but I'm finding a lot of my students will get right down, they're holding their brush like that, and you have too much pressure, too much control. You really want to try to hold your brush by the tail. Now I just want to put a little more interest in the mountain tops, make them just a little more interesting. Okay, now one of the things now I've got all of my vertical values in. Now I'm going to go back and take my darkest value, and I'm going to do the reflection of this tree right here. And I should probably do, you know, I'm going to do these little bushes here, but I'm going to, part of what I'm doing here will be reflection, part of it will be the bushes. Okay, now these trees back here, what do I do for reflections on those? See the height of this tree right here? Now you're going to find a lot of artists don't know anything about this. I've seen covers of art magazines with gross distortions of this. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm measuring with my brush the height of that tree. Now I don't come down to the water line, I come down to the bottom of the tree. I don't come down here and do that height of that reflection. I do it from here. Now that's still going to, the brush is still going to go down pretty far. but these reflections of things, the further something is back, the less reflection it shows. Okay, now what I've got to do, I've got to do the same thing with this mountain. I'm getting this mountain in. Okay, the mountain is the height of the mountain there. Okay, I bring it down. That mountain is going to come down to there in the reflections. Now, this mountain up here is not even going to come down far enough to show in these reflections. Okay, so now all of my vertical values are in. My darkest value, this down here, darkest value of foreground, uprights. Second value is things standing right upright back there. A little lighter and bluer there, a lighter and bluer, and actually makes the mountain a little bit purple. I want to get completely away from the green with that. Okay, now my next value is lighter still. It's lighter than those mountains, and that's my foreground. So now I'm going to take some yellow. I may temper it with a little bit of red. I can actually put a little white in it probably. I want quite a bit of yellow. I do want blue because I want it to be kind of towards green. Now I'll test it here. Yeah, I kind of like that. Now the foreground I generally put in with more, in the background I put this in with more horizontal brush strokes because I'm trying to communicate the lay of the land. But when I get up here in the foreground, I can start dancing my brush strokes all around. Okay, now when I'm outside painting, and let's see, I'm going to just put a few more little highlights on here. Get a little bit of, I don't want that to just be one solid piece of green. Now, you see how my uprights are darkest in the foreground and they tend to get lighter and lighter as they go back. Well, my foreground is lighter. My horizontal is lighter in the foreground and tends to get darker as it goes back. Yeah, I mean, you can actually do it either way, but it works best, I've found, this way. That way you have greater, see if I come across there, see I've got high contrast here, which brings that tree towards the front. I have low contrast back here because this is darker, so it goes back easier. Okay, so now I've gone darkest, lighter, 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 lighter. I'm only working one direction in value. So now I'm going to clean my brush out. Now I have to have a really, really clean brush. And I'm going to do a little different sky. The sky in this thing is pretty stormy. I'm going to do something a little different. I think I'll do I may have a cloud in the sky, but I'm going to do a pretty traditional sky. First thing I'm going to do, this is my first warm. Everything else has been blocked in cool. So with my first warm, and I'm putting in the bottom of my sky. See, I want to know exactly what the contrast is with the paint that's already on the canvas. And I've got to be really careful not to touch those trees. If I touch those trees, I guess I'll say when I touch those trees, I've got a pretty thick pot of paint. And so as soon as I touch those trees, I can go back and get thick paint on my brush and get all that muddy crap out of my brush. So now, there I'm starting at the bottom of the sky with warm blue and white. This is one of the reasons you don't want to do a lot of detailed drawing of your trees and stuff in the beginning, because you're just going to screw it up anyway when you start in with the sky. And I have to do the same thing with my mountain. I'm leaving a little halo around my mountain. Now, another thing one of the things I've noticed with my students is they'll put this bottom part of the sky in, and they'll do it like this. They put it right over the top of the mountain, and then it looks like this mountain is holding the sky up. You want this to go up to kind of a broken but somewhat level area. Now, from there I'm going up to, now I'm adding some blue. I'm adding some cool blue to this. Now I know from teaching with my students that they'll start up here with the blue and work down. And what happens is you end up with an edge across there where you got lighter, warmer, and then all of a sudden it's lighter bluer or darker bluer. What you do is start down in here and start working this paint and just work the paint up. You know, start down in here. You don't want any hard edges in your sky. And see down here. See, I have to do the same thing. I could just get barely right up next to that tree. And then I'll do this side. And so you're starting to be able to see all I'm trying to do, and see, I just did what my students, I say, you know, I complain about them doing. I started at the top and worked my way down. But now I have to make sure I don't have an edge left in there. I'm warmer, lighter at the bottom of my sky, and I'm warmer, lighter at the bottom of my sky. I'm darker, cooler at the top of my sky. Now what I want to do, now I'm going to get back into this kind of warm and cool, and I'm going to put the reflection of my sky in. And what I'm going to do, this sky, everything down here goes in vertical brush strokes. And now, if you're painting along with me, how are you holding your brush? This brush holding stuff was one of the most difficult things I had to learn when I started painting. My instructor finally took all my brushes away from me and gave me a handful of palette knives and told me he'd give me back my brushes when I learned how to hold them. Ever since then, my brushes have basically been a palette knife with hair. I see them as a device for moving paint. I don't see them necessarily as a brush. So there's my painting pretty much blocked in. So now what I want to do, I'm going to just take, you know, a little bit of this, some of this cool blue, and I'm just going to, you know, I want to have just a little bit of I don't want a smoothly blended sky. I want some movement in my sky. So I put a little darker, cool blue brush strokes. And now I'm going to try, get a few lighter, warmer brush strokes down in here. And now here's a trick that many artists don't know. And this is when you're looking at a horizon, and go out and test this. Go out and look at the horizon. When you get down to the horizon, the sky generally turns a little bit red right at the bottom. And what this is, it took me a long time to figure it out. What this is the layer of dust in the atmosphere. Now, if you do that, if you do this little red right at the bottom, the viewer, you may want to do it in a way the viewer doesn't even notice it, but they will certainly register it subconsciously. There will be something that will feel right about that because the viewer has seen that phenomenon but has never probably ever registered it consciously. You know, unless you're outside of a city looking at the layer of pollution in the sky. But that layer of red is there. Okay, now what I want to do, I'm going to clean my brush out a little bit. And see, I'm using, I think it's about a number 4 brush. And this is a 5x7 canvas. I'm painting the whole thing. I can get everything I need out of that brush, except maybe not clean enough for the sky. But the size of the brush, I found it helpful and useful to always use a bigger brush than I think I'll need. Just like it's always a good idea to put out twice as much paint as you think you'll need and use all of it so that you do have some texture to your surface. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come down here and mix a little more of this purple for my my mountains back here. Okay, now I have to decide where my light is coming from. What's my light source? I think my light source is going to be, I think I'm going to make it on the left. So what I'm going to do now is start re-blocking in. See, when you're blocking in, you're basically taking your best guess at what's going on, at what the value. Once you get your values blocked in, then you're kind of you're fine tuning, you're correcting everything. And so what I'm doing right now is just kind of fine tuning. I'm making this edge of my mountain a little more interesting. And I'm getting a unified value. Okay, now if the sun, bear with me, this is going to be hard to follow. My sun is coming from the left. What I'm going to do on the shadow side of the mountain, so the right hand side is the shadow side of the mountain, right? So I'm going to make it lighter. And just bear with me for a minute. What I'm doing, I'm creating some of the architecture of the mountain. All of my brush strokes are going downhill to the right because they're going away from the light. Your darkest value in these mountains is the value that will establish how far away those mountains are. If you start putting darker paint on there, your mountains will march forward and they will start looking very amateur. Okay, now my light is coming from the left, so what I'm going to do now is I'm taking some warm red and some white, and now I'm putting that white over here, putting that color over here just to test it on my palette, see how it looks against that purple. Now, this light is coming from the left, so the left side of the mountain in down strokes. See, I'm putting light on this mountain. So I don't know if you can. The problem, I don't know how well you can see things in the camera, but see this way I actually get light hitting the side of the mountain, because the right side of the mountain is warm, or is cool, a little bit lighter and cool. The left hand side of the mountain is quite a bit lighter and warm. So you can actually see the light hitting that mountain. Okay, so now see, I block in everything from front to back. Then I finish everything from back to front. See, I finished the sky. Now I finished that mountain. Now I've got to come in and I've got to get thicker paint. See, I've got a hair coming out of my brush. Let me get. Now, what I want to do is I've got this row of distant trees, and I just want to get a lot of vertical little brush strokes, so they actually, so I get that vertical sense of the trees. So now I've got to sharpen my brush. Because what I've got to do here, these trees are starting to get close enough that they're going to look, that I have to make them look a little more like trees. I've got to start making the viewer see trees right in here. And I've got these little spotlights of canvas tone that were left because I couldn't get in between them quite tight enough. And see my negative space between these is the space between each tree is different, and each tree is different. See, if I got that tree and that tree, if I want to put a tree between them, I put it closer to one or the other. And then I can make them a little darker as they come down, just because there's less light hitting the bottoms of the trees. Okay, so now I'm going to tackle that big tree, the closest tree. So I've got to go back and mix my original dark muddy green, and then now I've chose to make that tree taller. You don't ever want your tree to stop right at the top, and so it ends up tucking under the frame. If you're gonna, I'm making my tree top thick enough that it's obvious the tree is lighter than is taller than the picture plane. And I'm trying to kind of look at that tree that I'm emulating and trying to make this I'm not doing an actual portrait of that tree, but I'm trying to make things kind of look a bit like that tree. I like the really gnarly shapes in that tree. And one thing, pine trees do get a little wider as they come down. Okay, so I've got that. So, and I think since this tree is, now I'm going to put a light source. I'm going to take some warm yellow, a little bit of warm blue, and I've found if I put a little bit of red in it, it works a lot better. And I'm just going to hit a few areas here. You can see how that tree especially down here where I'm almost ready to lose the edge. See, now the tree kind of has some substance there. Okay, now I want to just play a little bit with this horizontal stuff. And bring that over. And now if the light is coming from the left, I'm going to have to put a little bit of a shadow coming out from the tree. That just helps to anchor it to the ground. Now I'm going to do the little bushes and whatever here goes along the front of the river. And this is just sloppy brushwork. The important thing is that it's a really dark value. And also I've got to have some of these trees in the reflection. Okay, now I'm going to clean my brush out. I'm going to put a little bit, even though those mountains might not come down, really, but reflection. I'm going to put a little bit of the color of those mountains in the water. Okay, now I'm going to take, I'm mixing up some warm blue and white. I want to get that color kind of in the sky, because what's down here is I'm going to be reflecting that sky. And see what I'm doing here, this stuff that I put in, the bottom part of that is going to be the reflection. The top part is the bushes. And what I'm doing here is just to get it's really pretty simple to get convincing water. It's just your reflections are all vertical brush strokes. The surface tension of the water is horizontal brush strokes. Now I think I want to, maybe I'll put, I'm just taking some really light color just to have one area of these brush strokes that are, I want to, just so I have a little bit of attention right over here kind of under this tree. So see, bad composition, and much better. I've moved the horizon line down to the bottom third. I've shoved the tree over to the left a little bit. I've balanced the tree with a high mountain over here. And generally, it's maybe it's not that good of a painting, but it makes the point. Take a lot of photographs, and take photographs, try to take a lot of photographs that have good distance in them, and that have a fairly simple composition, and then translate them into paint. Darkest value, verticals in the foreground. Second value, vertical's a little ways back. Third value, well, I guess this, and this are all subsets of the second value, because these are back further, and back further. Everything that steps back gets lighter and bluer. Then the ground gets lighter than that, and then the sky is the lightest of all. And you block in the sky last, you finish it first. It's a good habit to get into, because if you're outside painting, you're blocking everything in. You block in your sky last. That sky is going to last about 10 minutes in front of you, so you finish it right then. Then you finish the background, and you start working your way back forward again. But try this a few hundred times with photographs. And I'm not kidding. The more of these you do, the better painter the faster you will become a good painter. Do a bunch of these, and everyone's will try an 8x10, try a 9x12, but do lots and lots and lots of these little 5x7s. They will serve you really well. They may even turn out to be nice little maps for future large paintings. So they're really important to do if you want to be a really good landscape painter and be proficient at plein air painting. This is the best way to start.